Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating, that almost magical ability some people have to command a room without saying a single word. It's a power that isn't built on being loud or flashy, but on something much more potent. Absolute, weaponized stillness. So let's start with the core idea, which is kind of counterintuitive. The source we're looking at argues that true presence isn't about broadcasting outward. It's about building this immense potential energy inside you, in the silence. You basically create a vacuum that other people feel compelled to fill. It's not passive at all. It's the quiet before the storm. I love the analogy the source uses for this. Think about a roller coaster. The real thrill, the thing that gets your heart pounding, isn't just the speed. It's the contrast, right? It's that long, slow, tension-filled climb, and then the sudden, stomach-lurching drop. Your stillness? That's the climb. Your smallest movement? That's the drop. And this isn't just a metaphor. The source actually calls this perceptual engineering. By basically reducing your own physical noise to zero, you force everyone around you to crank up their internal sensitivity dial. What this does is it massively expands your communicative bandwidth. So your tiniest signals, your smallest movements, feel like explosions. You see how this totally flips the script on communication? You're not trying to broadcast louder. Instead, you're creating a silence so profound that other people have to lean in. They start projecting their own anxieties, their own interpretations onto you. They're the ones doing the heavy lifting, amplifying the meaning of your every little micro-motion. And this isn't some new age trick. It's a timeless human skill. Let's take a look at a few masters from different eras who absolutely perfected this. In our own time, just look at an actor like Mads Mikkelsen. He can sit perfectly still in a scene, and he creates this incredibly intense baseline. So when he finally moves, and it might just be a fractional curl of his lip, it detonates with meaning. You feel like you've just been handed this huge piece of information, but it was just a millimeter of movement. Now, let's go back in time with someone like Queen Elizabeth I, where the stakes were so much higher. This wasn't a performance, this was raw power. Her baseline was just regal immobility. Courtiers would stand there in the suffocating silence, just waiting, and a tiny withdrawal of her smile, that could signal the end of a career. Power was literally communicated in millimeters. And we can even trace this skill back to its primal roots. For an ancient hunter, stillness wasn't about power, it was about survival. The baseline was total, complete immobilization to avoid scaring off prey. And the micro-motion, a nearly invisible flex of a finger, that was the signal that meant the difference between life and death for the whole group. So, you might be thinking, okay, that's great for actors and queens, but what about the rest of us? Well, what if this isn't just some innate charisma? The source argues that this is actually a trainable, mechanical skill, a system that you can learn and deploy with precision. This is the really fascinating question the source poses, right? It reframes this whole concept, taking it away from magic and putting it firmly into mechanics. It suggests that commanding a room has less to do with your personality and way more to do with disciplined control over your own nervous system. And here's the twist. The training isn't about learning new things to do, new gestures to make. It's actually the exact opposite. It's a subtractive discipline. You audit and you eliminate all the unnecessary noise, all the fidgets, the tension, the rushed responses, until only pure, clear signal remains. The protocol is broken down into 3 pretty clear phases. First, you eliminate all that noise to create a perfectly still baseline. Second, you start to isolate single, tiny movements and you load them with intent. And then finally, you deploy this in the real world, using that stillness, using those pauses to make other people do the work to understand you. Okay, so theory is one thing, but let's see how these principles actually play out under pressure. We're going to use a really common but surprisingly high-stakes social scenario where this skill can completely change the dynamic. So imagine this. You're on a first date. Conversation's going well, but then your date decides to, poke a little. To test your frame, see how you react when you're put under a little bit of social pressure. She leans in, and she hits you with this. Now it sounds playful, but it's a test. And she's watching everything. Your reaction, your body language, all of it. So, how do you respond? The source is really clear here. This is a critical moment. Your response right here is going to define the power dynamic for the rest of this interaction. Do you get defensive? Do you try to explain yourself? Or do you use the protocol? The most powerful move is actually the most minimal. A tiny smile, a single, slightly ambiguous word, and then you just return to that calm, neutral baseline. You don't answer the question directly, because here's the thing. Mystery completely collapses the second you try to explain it. You pass the test by showing you are completely, totally unmoved by it.
All right, for this last part, let's turn the diagnostic lens on ourselves. Because, according to the source, most of us are unconsciously leaking information and just draining our own presence, day in and day out.
Think of it like this. Your nervous system is basically a radio tower, constantly broadcasting your internal state. Your anxiety, your neediness, your desire for approval, it all leaks out through these tiny, unconscious movements. So the first step to controlling your presence is figuring out where your own leaks are. So the source gives us this pretty powerful diagnostic checklist. See if any of these sound familiar. Are you blinking too much or over-nodding? That's broadcasting appeasement. What about motion inflation? Using your hands way too much because you don't trust your words to be enough. Maybe it's a timing leak. You respond way too fast because you just can't handle the tension of silence. Finding your specific pattern, well, that's the key to plugging the leak.
And all of this brings us to the final powerful takeaway. Mastering your presence isn't about expressing more, it's about containing more. It's about learning how to store social and psychological pressure within this container of absolute stillness. And when you finally choose to act, that tiny micro-motion isn't just a movement, it's a precise, controlled release of all that stored energy. So the real question isn't how can you be heard, but how much pressure can you truly hold in silence?